Hello and welcome back. Today we will be talking about Infamy and how to expand while keeping Infamy low. We will be talking about a variety of topics. How does Infamy as a mechanic work? Why do we want to keep it low? How to expand by conquering, how to expand by vassalizing, how to expand by diplo-vassalizing, and what are the effects on the bottom line. Generally speaking, diplo-vassalizing will take up the least infamy, and straight-up conquering will take up the most infamy. A good strategy, just the kind of general strategy, is you want to keep infamy below 25 or at 1,000, depending on whether or not you want to turn a corner. We'll talk about why in a second. But let's get into the mechanic itself. So infamy is a negative effect that you get when you conquer states. The general calculation is going to be based on population. So no matter what you are doing, whether you are conquering or puppeting, if you take a look, it will be modified by the total population of the target. If you're vassalizing or if you're conquering a state, it's modified by the population. This is not the only mechanic, but this is how you generate infamy. Infamy will slowly decay over time, and this will be influenced by the amount of extra influence you are floating, as it were. Floating excess influence will make your infamy decay faster. So this is one way to make it decay faster, but it's really a small effect, so if you want to use the Diplo, use it. So this is how infamy generates. Why is it bad? Well, other countries will not like you if you are infamous. There are 4 tiers of infamy, and as you move to the next tier, you will suffer increasing negative effects diplomatically. The 4 tiers, let me pull it up for you, are reputable when you are 0 to 25, so this is the range you want to stay in, if you can, for a majority of the game. 25 to 49, which is infamous, 50 to 100, which is Notorious, and then over 100, which is Pariah. The absolute cap for infamy is 1,000. You cannot generate over 1,000 infamy, but if you get to 1,000, you're not coming down from that anyways. So, when you become more infamous, people become more likely to adopt attitudes towards you that are negative, such as cautious or hostile, belligerent, whatever it is. And they will tend not to develop these attitudes if you can stay under 25. So you can kind of expand as much as you want if you keep the infamy low, and no one really cares. They will also be more likely to leave the market. Now, this isn't a video about markets, so it's a little bit much to talk about what the benefits of having people in your market are, but one of the benefits is you can siphon off population from the market. This is probably the biggest one when you pull a bunch of people in your market, and so this will decrease your ability to siphon off pops from the market. Okay, and then third, people or all countries will get access to a special CB if you go over to 100 and you become a pariah, which they will get the cut down to size CB, which allows them to declare war to release all the people you have conquered recently. I believe it's any war you still have like a decaying effect from infamy. So these are the reasons to keep the infamy low. The biggest one is you can't pull people into your market, in my opinion. Getting people in your market is a very strong thing. But eventually, when you become so strong that you don't care that everyone might declare war on you, that then might be the case where you just don't care about your infamy anymore, in which case you just go up to 1,000. So I think it's really, really polarized. I think that, generally speaking, the mechanic should be altered to make it so that, it's not just this under 25 or over 1,000 business. You've noticed here we're playing Great Britain. We've expanded quite a lot, and it's 1882, and we still have a very low infamy rate. We've annexed them, we've annexed them, we've annexed them. Let's talk about it. Okay, when you go to conquer a state, you will notice, let's just take a quick look here. In the interactions, we have to click this, and then we will go to conquer state, conquer Mahara. You will notice that it is modified by 2 things. The rank status of your country, the rank status of the opponent's country, and there's also this base value number. So the base value for conquering is more expensive than the base value for vassalizing. It gets multiplied by the population, and then it gets multiplied by this other number. In general, the general heuristic is the bigger a power you are, the more infamy you will occur by taking someone on, and the smaller a power the opponent, the less the infamy you will occur. And this is also bifurcated between recognized and unrecognized countries. Recognized countries generate less infamy when they are attacking, and they also generate less infamy when they are attacking an unrecognized country. So, in general, this means if you're trying to keep infamy low, you should go after unrecognized countries. We're going to pull up the wiki again here for the rank list, and so you can take a look. So, here we have it. Great power has plus 20% interest or infamy for attacking, and if we go, being a major power will give you less, minor power is neutral, insignificant power is minus 10%. So the smaller you are when you are recognized, the less infamy you generate. Same for if you are unrecognized. Unrecognized major powers will get, this is the number we need to be looking at. They will get 50% infamy. Regional powers will only get 40%. Unrecognized powers will get 30% here. Now, it also, this is your infamy when you are attacking. The infamy generated to the attacker, which is, this is caring about who the defender is, you will generate more as a great power than you would, for example, as a major power or a minor power. So one strategy you can have is being inside someone's market will cap your power rank status, for example, in order to make it be smaller. So if you are playing inside someone's market, you will be capped underneath their status. So if we were, let's say, not Great Britain and instead Brazil inside Great Britain's market, Brazil would be unable to become a great power no matter how big they got because they are inside of our market, which means they would generate less infamy. In general, I don't think this is a good strategy just for generating less infamy, but if you're going to do a really high infamy thing, and you're also going to leave the market, do the high infamy thing before you leave the market and become a great power. But if you take a look here, there's a bunch of other bonuses for being inside someone's market that make it such that, not being inside someone's market, for being a high rank, that make it so you generally don't want to avoid becoming a great power. Being a great power is good. Getting this interest rate is nice. Getting a better tech spread, although you get good tech spread for, this. Getting more influence, these sorts of things, all of these. Generally, you want to be a stronger power, but it's worth mentioning that the bigger you get, the more infamy you're going to generate. You will always generate less infamy if you are a recognized power than an unrecognized power, and you will also generate more infamy going after unrecognized powers, which means you should just go after the unrecognized powers. Attacking great powers is not a good way to generate infamy. What you want to do, if you are going to fight a great power, is you want to break them up. So see what happened to France here. We made them release Occitania and Brittany, and then we subjugated Occitania. I don't think we subjugated Brittany here, but this will be a lower infamy cost because Occitania would not be a great power, so vassalizing Occitania or taking states from Occitania will take less. And so this is kind of what you want to do. You don't want to take states from really big countries. You instead want to break them apart into smaller countries and then take the smaller countries' states. In general, conquering, though, is going to generate a lot of infamy. Now, this infamy has a cap. Okay, it's based on population, but can we not start a war with them? I suppose we can't. I was going to show you that China, for example, there's a cap to the amount of infamy you can generate, and I believe it is a ×5 multiplier. So if we go to conquer a place that's really well populated, so for example, Siamese Cambodia, the biggest multiplication that it can be for total population is going to be ×5. So this means that there's going to be an upper limit, which creates a strategy where, in general, you're going to want to conquer places that have low population and a lot of resources, if you're just taking states. A good example of this is East Borneo, East Borneo has relatively low population, not anymore because we conquered it, and a lot of resources. So taking states like this will be really useful. And also, since there's a cap to the amount of infamy you can generate, taking states with really high population is also good. So for example, taking the China state Fujian into Jiangxi, which tends to be the highest population state in the game, and southern Anhui is also a really high population state. Also, Beijing is a very good state. The population's low because we've had it in our market for a while and we're siphoning off pops from it. But this can be the thing. So you want to go either after high resource states, which will generate low infamy, or states that are way over the cap since the biggest part is X5. If you try and conquer China states, you'll notice they all take the same amount of infamy to conquer. Okay, so You want to go after unrecognized powers, the smaller the better, and you want to go after high resource areas or really high population. I mean really, really high population. But this middling stuff is not very good. So this is why conquering states in Africa, for example, is generally not that good, because they kind of have, they have enough population to get sort of close to the cap, but not a small enough, but not like a good relative. They're not like way over the cap. So for example, if we go to conquer this state, we'll see this is 5.3 infamy. We're getting 1.52 multiplier. We'd want to try and get a smaller multiplier. But we see that we are getting minus 50% because it's an unrecognized power. Now there is another modifier that is very important here. Let's find a subject of ours. I think Ukraine's a good example. You notice puppeting all of Ukraine just takes a little bit of infamy. And this is because there's a last final modifier. It's multiplied by 0.1 because Ukraine is a subject. This modifier is huge, and it is also why, generally speaking, you don't want to be conquering states straight up. Every single country, it is faster, or sorry, not faster, it takes less infamy to puppet them and then annex them. So if we go back to Mahara, which we reviewed kind of at the start of this, we will see, of course we zoomed in so we got the state instead of the country. If you're zoomed out, you get the country. Making them a puppet takes 2.3 infamy. Conquering the state takes 3.8. We can make them a puppet, accrue 2.3, and then only pay 0.4 later, because it's based off of this for annexing it, but times, it's going to be this times 0.1, which is roughly 0.4. So if we make them a puppet, this will take 2.3, and then annexing them later with the 0.1x modifier is going to take another 0.4 for a total of 2.7. So this is less infamy overall if you first puppet and then annex the countries. So generally speaking, you're going to want to puppet first and then annex if you want to get the largest amount of territory, you know, per whatever. Also, if your standard of living per infamy. Also, if your standard of living is extremely high, after you puppet them, they will be in your market. Notice, ooh, didn't want to do that. Notice Ukraine's in our market here. They're in the British market, which means you can siphon off pops from them if their standard of living is really low, which might even lower their population. Although, generally speaking, population tends to increase, and the one instance in which you can pay more infamy for puppeting and then annexing than you would for just annexing to begin with is if you puppet a state and their population grows by a huge amount, and then you annex them, then it might cost you more. But this is the only instance. Okay, so this is another way to expand, which will accrue a lot less infamy. It's roughly 60 to 75% of the amount of infamy you would have gained, you gain. There is important to note, I believe, I'm almost certain, the cap for this is 50 for vassalizing. So it is multiplied by x50 due to the population of the target. So for example, with Russia, it doesn't matter how much bigger their population gets, it's going to be x50. The base value for making a subject by puppeting or dominioning them is 3. The base value for conquering is 5. So this is what it's being multiplied by. And then you have to make them a puppet and then annex them. So it's going to be 3.5, or I guess exactly 70% the cost to, you know, puppet and then annex. Okay, so there's a third way to expand here. And that way is to get someone diplomatically. So let's take a quick look at Brazil. Brazil is a protectorate of ours, meaning they are not quite yet a puppet, but we want to get them into a puppet status as soon as their relations get negative, because you need to have negative relations to declare a war. Ukraine is also a protectorate, and we can puppet them now, and this will generate infamy. The way you get someone diplomatically is you need to first improve relations with them and make them at least cordial, and then you need to pull them into your customs union. After you pull them into your customs union, you can try and protectorate them. There will be a lot of modifiers. If they are pursuing a strategy of defending the borders, they tend to not join. If they have a lot of ideological differences, they will not join. If they have a weird attitude or a bad attitude, which again is influenced by your infamy level. This is one of the reasons you want to keep infamy low. Getting people into your market is extremely difficult if your infamy is high. Let's find someone with whom we do not yet have a customs union. I think Sokoto we are trying to get a customs union. No, okay, so let's take a look. So if we look at inviting them to the customs union, we will see we have a -10 modifier for being infamous. I believe it's 25 for the next rank up, and so it's virtually impossible to pull people into your market and diplo annex people if you are already infamous. So this is why it's really important to keep it down, or like one of the biggest reasons is you can't diplo annex people. But moving forward, you have to have good relations, and then you see that our overall modifier is -50, which seems like a lot, but if you get an obligation, it will take 50 off of it, or -52. So now it's 2. So we're actually really close to being able to pull Sokoto into the market, and if we were not infamous, we could pull them into our customs union, despite the fact that they're wary, which usually it's kind of hard to do that. But once they're into your market, then you can try and make them a protectorate. Now, there's going to be a negative modifier for not having a customs union. It's virtually impossible to protectorate someone through this modifier. So you customs union them first, then you make them a protectorate. Notice there is a 25 modifier for infamous, so it is really hard to protectorate someone diplomatically if you're infamous as well. Once they are a protectorate, then they are considered a subject. So then you just damage relations with them, and you puppet them this way. If we were trying to puppet Ukraine before we did this, it would cost 112 infamy instead of 11.2. Allow me to repeat that. If we were trying to puppet infamy or puppet Ukraine without first protectorating them, it would cost 10 times the amount of infamy for us. There is an infamy cost when you protectorate. It is somewhere between 5 and 6, so this means you only want to protectorate and then puppet larger countries. The smaller countries you want to just puppet. Now, there's some reasons why you would maybe not want to, protectorate or puppet and then annex smaller countries. For example, a country like Sintang, it will take 2 wars to puppet and then annex. If you just annex them, it will just take 1 war, and so if you just look at the amount of difference in infamy it's going to cost you 70%. Maybe it's not worth it to puppet them first, just from a time and the amount of wars you have to declare perspective, and so smaller countries tend to be the best targets for just annexing, smaller countries with low population, just single state countries. If you have a country like Dainam, which is, 1, 2, 3 states, generally 3 or more state countries start becoming more worth it to puppet and then annex, and then countries that are going to generate an enormous amount of infamy, you want to protectorate, then puppet, then annex. It will cost an extra 6 infamy. So for example, if we take a look at Ukraine, it is costing us more than just this 11. It's costing us about 17.2, and the reason why is protectorating them costs 6. So it's 5 to 6. There's like some modifier, but it's really like level in terms of how much it costs. And so if the total infamy is, if it is above, let's see, math is hard. If the total infamy of puppeting a state or a country is like more than 5 or 6, it will take less infamy to protectorate them first. But I think you want to have them like over 15 for making Protectorate to feel worth it, because it takes a long time. You have to bankroll them for a long time in order to do this. You have to bankroll them and get an obligation to pull them into the customs union, and then another obligation to Protectorate them, generally speaking, and so this will take quite a while. Okay, there's a few other considerations, or mainly one. If you are going to puppet someone, consider dominioning them instead. This will give you less control. I believe it gives you less money, so they do not automatically get pulled into your war, and they have to pay 10% of their treasury to their overlord. If you just puppet them, they have to pay 20% into their treasury, and they do come into your wars. But if they are a dominion, they can expand on their own. If we take a look here, earlier on, the East India Company owned all of India, or the East India Company's India, and you've noticed they've taken a huge chunk of Burma. This was when they were a dominion, and when they're expanding and accruing infamy, you're not accruing that infamy, so making subjects that are likely to expand dominions instead of puppets when you're going to eventually annex them, this is a good shout. So in this run, for example, we might puppet Russia. But instead of puppeting them, we would dominion them, because we're not interested in their money. We're fine. We would rather have them attack people and conquer states, accruing infamy that we don't have to accrue for when we annex them later. And when we annex them later, once they are a puppet, if I take a look, let's see, Hybridad is a subject we can annex here. You'll notice this is just a tiny amount. Because they are a subject, it's multiplied by the 1.1 modifier, which means it's really, really cheap to annex once you have a puppet. And so if Hybridad ate another country and accrued the infamy, they would gain the population, they would gain the state. It would still cost us more to do it, but that more would be multiplied by that 0.1. And so we are more than happy to let Russia eat someone else if we were to dominion them, and then just pay that 0.1 more on that eat. So that's kind of like the whole shtick on it. You don't want infamy because it makes it impossible to expand your market. Diplomatically speaking, you don't want infamy because people are more likely to join wars against you. You don't want infamy because people can get the cut down to size CB against you, and you don't want infamy because they will leave your market. If you get up to 75 infamy, that's kind of the threshold where people will say, nope, I'm out of here. If they are already in your market. Assuming other variables, it'll make them more likely to leave the market. If there's some variables already making them want to leave the market, even 25 can make them leave the market. They will also get attitudes. You know, like, Manchuria is cautious because we were naughty and we took Beijing, and so they've been cautious for like forever. Okay. That's why you don't want the infamy. The way the infamy works is it goes, there's 4 tiers, 25, 50, 75, 100, and each of these tiers are where you get the malices. So there's no difference between 1 infamy and 24 infamy in terms of what it's costing you. It's very much at the intervals, and then there's an infamy cap of 1,000. The lowest infamy way, or the highest infamy way to expand, is by conquering states. Generally, you should do these, in my opinion, on single state countries to just avoid the 2 wars. And it's not a lot of infamy anyways, you just conquer them. And this is kind of how I approach the game a little bit, just so you have to declare 1 fewer war, although it is cheaper to puppet first. For any country over 3 states, or say over a cost of 5 infamy, I think you should puppet them first, and then annex them later, in order to, when you annex them, have the 0.1 bonus, or sorry, 0.1x on how much you are paying for the annexation. And you also get all of their territories. This is another important detail, I suppose. When you get really, really strong, people are likely to back down against you. This makes, you know, taking multiple states impossible, but what you can do is you can puppet and then annex, and it will be 2 wars to take all of their states. This is also part of why I think the 3-state thing is a good rule of thumb for when you want to start puppeting and then annexing, because you can always take a 2-state country in 2 wars, right? You take 1 state, you take the next state, and you can take it in 2 wars by vassalizing and then annexing as well. But once you get to 3 states, just conquering, it can take up to 3 wars to conquer. And so it's the main benefit of conquering is declaring fewer wars. This benefit is nullified if they have 3 or more states, because they can back down against you. Once you start getting into the 15 plus infamy range with some of the bigger countries, also like Brazil, Mexico, these sorts of things, then protectorating and then annexing is going to be easier. Generally speaking, if you are a Western country, it is much easier to protectorate other Western countries, because one of the penalties is going to be an ideological penalty. If we take a look here, we will see that they will not accept, and one of the big reasons is going to be the ideological differences of our government, and also that we're infamous. So in order to diplo protectorate, you have to keep the infamy low throughout the entire game. An important thing to note about infamy in general, though, is it's always decaying. This is how it goes down, and so you kind of always want to be decaying. You always want to be above 0 infamy, but also below 25, so you want to stay in the sweet spot. So, I think I've covered and repeated just about everything in terms of a summary. This is how you expand while keeping infamy low, why you want to do it, and this sort of thing. If anyone has any questions related to infamy, or suggestions for another video in terms of what you want a tutorial on, feel free to let me know. Until then, just try and keep the infamy between between 0.1 and 25 is a good rule of thumb. Expand slowly and you can expand more. You know, just conquering states is generally not good unless you are taking, you know, itty-bitty states or you're taking huge honka-honka states, like all the Chinese ones, because what it will do is, like, once you are over the population, like the cap, which is ×5, it doesn't matter how much over you are. I think you hit the population cap maybe at around like 4 or 5 million. So if you take a 16 million state, you get the benefit of getting 16 million pops into your country. And so this is a good way to approach it as well. I think just about any country can benefit from taking Fujian, for example, from China, and they'll definitely benefit taking Beijing the most, because you get the Forbidden City as well, but that's kind of like a different outside thing, not as related to Infamy. But here we go. It will decay faster with Diplo, this sort of thing. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Any sorts of thoughts, recommendations, put them in the comments, and have a good day. Whoopsie, I forgot a few things, so this is just a couple extra things here at the end. There's also a bonus, or in the amount of infamy you incur, where you incur less infamy if you are taking another place that is already of your main culture. We cannot check this right now because we're in English, but for example, during my Wallachia run, it was much cheaper to take Romanian territory because that was our primary culture. So taking your primary culture's states will cost less infamy. Also, returning states, if you have the return state CB, will also cost less infamy. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact number, but this is another thing to consider. Also, earlier I said that there was a 75 tier on the infamy. The infamy tier list does not have a 75 tier. It goes 0 to 25 to 50 to 100. So these are the tiers, and so the tier is under 25, under 50, under 100, over 100. So there's 4 different levels, but they don't include a 75 tier. And then another thing is, a big part of keeping the infamy low is not ever adding a war goal except the primary war goal that is going to generate infamy. Allow me to repeat that. You only want the primary war goal to generate infamy if there's any chance of the opponent backing down. The reason for this is that if they back down, you will not get a full refund on the infamy. You will get a partial refund. I don't know what this percentage is. I think it's about a 70% refund, but you just incur the infamy for nothing. And so you want to make sure that whatever war goals you're asking, you want to not put infamy war goals in any of the secondary war goals, which means, generally speaking, for conquering states, you only want to have conquer state as a primary war goal, and so this is why either one or two, this is another further reason why either 1 or 2 state countries are going to be the ones you want to conquer from, and you don't want to try and conquer all of a, like, 10 state country, because if you put a bunch in there, and then they just back down and give you the one, you still incur a ton of extra infamy. And so this is just a couple little bit of addendums slash modifications slash, you know, just a little bit extra that I realized as I was going through the video that I had forgotten these things. One further thing. Puppeting, you can only puppet someone who is below your status in terms of rank. And so you see here, we are playing as Great Britain. We cannot puppet Prussia, no matter how much we want to, because they are also a great power. And so if you want to puppet, so you have to puppet people of lower rank. And if you are a great power and you want to puppet another great power, you have to cut them down to size somehow. So for example, Austria is now puppetable because we released Hungary and Transylvania out of them. They also lost Romania on their own. But France, we released Occitania and Brittany, which is a big contributor to them being not a great power anymore, which makes them puppetable. And so a part of, you know, if you have this strategy, oh, I want to take France, or I want to take a province from France, but they're a great power, I can't do it, I want to vassalize them, you know, this sort of thing, but then I can't vassalize them. You first cut them down to size, you have them release some countries. Releasing countries costs no infamy. And then Once they release the countries, then you will just vassalize them. Vassalizing will cost less when they are also lower rank in general. So, for example, we would have a better modifier for vassalizing the US than we would for vassalizing Russia, because Russia has a larger power rank. United States is just a minor power. So we will pay a different penalty. So in theory, if someone's really close to minor power, maybe you want to kneecap them first and send them down, like kind of what we did with the US here with the not Great Britain. This was New Africa. We released New Africa and then we annexed it. But this is just a few extra things. Don't add war goals that accrue infamy, except for the primary war goal. You have to have them as a lower rank if you want to puppet them. And in order to do this, you can make them release countries. There is no tier at 75 infamy. Conquering states that are within your primary ethnic group cost less infamy, and returning states cost less infamy. There is actually an experiment I'm doing in this run. I don't know the answer yet, but we had Portugal, which had Macau, and we annexed Macau. It's British Guangdong, but it's Macau, if I recall correctly. And so what this does is, I'm wondering if we incorporate this, can we get the return state CB on Great Qing? I'm not sure the answer, but if so, this could be a little gamey kind of thing that you can do. You cannot incorporate a treaty port, so you can't just take a treaty port. You have to take someone else's treaty port that they took. But then if you incorporate it, maybe you can get the return state CB. Not sure yet. This is a bit of an experiment. If I figure it out, I'll try and put it in the comments. Anyways, I'll also try and put this extra additions in the comments as well. Anyways, offward and on.